Patrick.
Hey, Michael J.
Man, Throne of Eldraine spoilers. So many. So exciting.
Yeah, dude. We're seeing mechanics. We're seeing all matter of weird card frames. We've got a bunch of planeswalkers. There's a lot of places that we're going to want to go to. But what do you think of just starting with the big boy himself, Garruk, Cursed Huntsman?
Oh wow! So Garruk, Cursed Huntsman he's probably like the big card of the set, I would guess. Right? He's a 6 casting cost planeswalker, legendary planeswalker. Garruk, and he's got 5 starting loyalty. And he's got 3 abilities: a 0, which is create 2 2/2 black and green wolf creature tokens with, when this creature dies, put a loyalty counter on each Garruk you control. -3, destroy target creature and draw a card. And -6, you get an emblem with creatures you control, get +3/+3, and have trample. So it's like an emblem overrun kind.
Yeah. So this this is a really interesting card from a new Planeswalker space sort of place. They haven't really made any Planeswalkers that can't ultimate naturally, right? Like Garruk here, that's kind of new space anyway. And the fact that the only way for him to gain loyalty built in is the wolves that he makes dying. There's a lot to unpack there, but to kind of frame the whole thing, I think it's important to actually start with that -3 ability, because destroy target creature, draw a card, and you just have this amazing planeswalker in play. That's an incredible 3-for-1.
That's a great 6, right? Like,
oh yeah.
They've printed so many 6s in the last couple of sets that are some variation of destroy 1 permanent with value, right? So whether that was like Vraska 6, whether that's Ugin now, right? There are no shortage of these kind of cards. So this is yet another variation on tap 6 mana, blow up something, hopefully it's pretty good, and get a value out of it. In this case, it's a card.
Yeah, card is pretty good value.
Yeah.
And destroy target creature is pretty good. But I think part of what makes it so attractive is that the planeswalker that you get left with is making 2 wolves a turn instead of just 1. Like Liliana or Ugin.
Oh yeah, that's true. I think this card is spectacular, and I think they made it just for you.
Dude, I don't know. I don't know about just for me, because there sure are going to be a lot of other people jamming this one. But I did want to note, if you think through it, there's actually an incredible amount of depth to how this card plays, right? Like, if you just put it down and do the 0 and make 2 wolves, what's your opponent going to do? Right? Like, if they attack, if you chump block, if they can't actually hit Garruk, it's hard for them to attack, because the very act of you chump blocking gives you loyalty. And if you chump block with both wolves, you can actually ultimate Garruk next turn and have Garruk live. And hopefully whatever else you play from your hand will be enough to defend your Garruk, given that you have this +3/+3 and trample unreal emblem.
Oh, and you're going to have 6 to 7 mana also, right? So that's the other thing, right? You should be able to do something with that.
Yeah, and then this Garruk is actually incredibly exciting with things like Proliferate or Ajani, who puts loyalty in your planeswalkers.
Yeah, I think like if you've got enough space, right, you can use something along the lines of Karn's Bastion, which was a favorite in the mono green planeswalker deck, 2 cycles. That's going to be pretty synergistic here because he already starts with 5 loyalty, getting up to 6. You're already right there. I'm going to run a hot take. I think that Garruk is going to be played in multiples typically, right? So when you see cards like this that are expensive and legendary, sometimes we see a Liliana, a 1 or a 2 of at the top end of a control or planeswalker deck. I think we might see like 4 Garruks really, really commonly, because the guy is designed to kind of go down swinging, either with like multiple uses of that -3 or a fast activation on the -6, then you want your next Garruk in line.
Yeah, I think we're going to see both ways because I think he's such a powerful thing to ramp out. Or if you try, like if you're playing a deck with a Ajani or any way to abuse him, or possibly some kind of a token Planeswalker hybrid, you're going to want a lot of Garruks. But I also think he's going to show up in just good stuff decks as a curve topper. Sometimes it's just a 1 or 2. So I think we're going to get the full range.
Okay, so one of us is going to be right.
Well, I mean, there's no question this guy's going to be a hit.
Yeah.
There's just no way that this isn't one of the best cards in the set.
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and the reason that I said that they made it just for you, I don't know if you remember this, but even before they printed a card by the name of Siege Rhino, they had decks that were Abzan decks before we even know the word. And a lad from Michigan won a Pro Tour with a 6 casting cost Planeswalker, not dissimilar from this, right?
Oh, yeah, they're actually quite similar.
Yeah, a token producing ability, a creature destroying, potentially value generating creature destroying -, and then like a make my remaining guys bigger emblem. And this card is so reminiscent of the Elspeth
6, yeah,
to win Pro Tour Journey into Nick. And I was just like, even before Siege Rhino was printed, he knew the way. Dude,
Garruk Cursed Huntsman. Elspeth is back, baby. Just in Garruk's body. On Garruk on his Little Red Riding Hood type of time.
Well,
or whatever it is his outfit is these days.
We're returning to Theros right after this one, so maybe Elspeth will be back anyway.
True, double true. What do you think of the other walkers they revealed? Right, like for instance, Oko, Thief of Crowns, 1 blue-green. What a weirdo, right? Like 4 loyalty to start with, great. +2 to get a food token, which is an artifact that's like a clue, but instead of drawing a card, when you pay 2 and sack it, you gain 3 life. And then Oko's +1 ability, so that's a +2 and then a +1, which is target artifact or creature loses all abilities and becomes a 3/3 green elk. A base 3/3 green elk. And notably, he can turn the food into the elk. Sort of a reverse vegetarian thing. And then exchange control.
And he's always gaining -5 loyalty. Whatever nonsense that's happening, he's gaining loyalty.
And then -5, exchange control of target artifact or creature you control and target creature an opponent controls with power 3 or less. So in theory, you could put him down and immediately turn your opponent's creature into a 3/3 that you then later trade. You
could. I mean, you could play like a first turn mana acceleration creature, then drop Oko on turn 2, and then turn your Llanowar Elf into a 3/3, right? You could just do that straight out and have a pretty good defender.
You could put Oko down on turn 3 or on turn 2 with your elf situation, make some food, and then no matter what your opponent plays, you can just give them the food and take it. Take whatever they played, assuming it's a 3 or less.
So I have a lot of things that I'm thinking about with Oko. First of all, this was one of the first cards that was officially spoiled, and I think they were very deliberate in revealing a card that had +2 create a food token without telling us what a food token was, right? So that was just kind of a mystery maker. I think that was pretty deliberate. And then I think this card is very, very attractive in that it's cheap and it can generate some value and advantages for, it has a high starting loyalty for its casting cost. But the thing that's weird about it is it's not particularly powerful. It ultimates quickly, right? You can get to ultimate and actually like ultimate plus survivability, right, with Oko. You can get to like +2 to the food, gives you 6 loyalty, and then you hit the -5 the very next turn. And it's like, well, what did you really do? Like, it depends what the opponent's got, obviously. Like, the biggest thing I could think of in Standard that might be scary is like a Rotting Register, right? But do I even want that? It's an interesting question. At the same time, I think that you can build a deck around Oko.
Wait, you're talking about like transforming Rotting Register into a 3/3? Because obviously you can't steal the Rotting Register until after you transform it. Right. Just because it can only steal creatures with power 3 or less.
Oh,
right.
Sorry, I thought it was casting cost. That's,
No, even more limited.
Yeah, it's even more limited. You're right. I mean, it's not that powerful on the top end. So I'm thinking,
I think the thing you want to do with this guy is these pluses, man.
yeah.
When you drop him down, the fact that you can just immediately transport, like you get to pongify something on the way in and still have a 5 loyalty walker, and you're like, well, but he doesn't do anything. It's like, oh, really? You can just pongify everything every turn. That's a powerful effect.
Oh yeah, if they're playing guys that are better than a 3/3, you're certainly gaining some value there. It's not costing you a card or a mana. But what I was thinking is like one strategy you could do with Oko is to play like a bunch of Wall of Blossom, right? Like I'm just using that term loosely, right? Like some defensive cards that are difficult to get through that have high toughness, and you just like make food every turn, or you just like play walls and make food. I am certain there are some decks that could never beat a deck that just sits there and makes food and deploys walls. And like if you had some way to cash in having a lot of permanents, obviously we don't have.
Well, and artifacts in particular, there's ways to do that. And life gain, obviously you've got access to things like Boros' Citadel.
Oh, sure.
But I think the having a lot of permanents, I mean, just there's cards in the set already that reward you for having a lot of artifacts, and the fact that Oko can give you a steady stream of them, like this combines with Shimmer Dragon quite well, which is that 4 blue 5/6 flying dragon. As long as you control 4 or more artifacts, Shimmer Dragon is hexproof, and you can tap 2 untapped artifacts such as the food that Oko makes to draw a card. And you just do this at will, 0 mana.
Yeah, I mean Shimmer Dragon I think might be one of the best creatures that they've spoiled so far. The card, I mean, forgetting about types, right? It's a dragon, not a djinn, but it's basically Mahamoti djinn, right? Like 4/u for a 5/6 flyer, and then it also has 2 abilities, and they're both really good, right? Like having 4 artifacts in play, this is a profoundly powerful creature. You have 4 artifacts in play. A, they can't kill it, and B, it's just implying that you're drawing 2 extra cards a turn as well. If you just had Oko and you're like food, Shimmer Dragon, they're not dead necessarily, but they can't be happy.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that Shimmer Dragon can come down and draw 2 cards immediately, and your opponent's hand's going to be so tied with regards to how to interact with it anyway. Obviously, Shimmer Dragon doesn't defend you as well as some expensive cards do, but if you're facing somebody who's got point removal, Shimmer Dragon's going to eat them alive.
I mean, 6 toughness and hexproof together is... The ways that you get through that there's like a narrow path, I think.
Hard sweepers and edicts, but mostly just try to race it.
Yeah, I mean, like, edicts don't
guess you can permission
against Oko, right? Oko can just...
Well, they do a lot of the time, because you're going to be... If you're making just food all left and right,
yeah, but what if I
not going to always have
one of my food?
Then you're smart.
Then,
you still need to have 4 other artifacts. Yeah. Either way, though, this card seems definitely dope, and that's not even considering the possibility of some sort of crazy combo, with some artifact that lets you untap itself under some condition or whatever,
Yeah, I mean, powerful all around.
The third walker, let me see, where is it?
The Royal Scions, is that the name of it?
Yeah, the Royal Scions. So what do you think about this one, man?
I'm not sure yet. It's a blue and red planeswalker. So blue-red 1 for a 5 loyalty planeswalker, and it's weird. It's called the Royal Scions, but it's a legendary planeswalker, Will Rowan. I guess Will Rowan is a new character we haven't met yet.
No. The 2 people, the Scions. One of them's Will, one of them's Rowan.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, if you look at the art, one of them's Will, one of them's Rowan. They're the Royal Scions.
Oh, I guess there used to be a character, Will Kenrith, and a different character, Rowan Kenrith.
Right.
Oh, I didn't miss. I didn't hit that. That's like from a not standard legal set, right? Okay.
There we go.
So this card has the +1 ability, draw a card and discard a card, so it's a loot, right? And then
with 5 loyalty base.
Yeah.
So going up to 6, that's a hefty chunk of life there, of health, of loyalty.
At 3 mana, right? That's an enormous amount. As a different plus, target creature gets +2 and gains first strike and trample, which that's it. The first one kind of makes sense to me on a 3 mana blue and red walker, but kind of my confusion on this is the second one doesn't seem like a very blue and red planeswalker ability. And then
the first ability is blue, the second one's red.
Yeah?
Yeah, because draw a card, then discard a card is just blue. Red gets discard a card, then draw a card.
Okay.
And it's kind of weird to have both ways on the walker. So instead, the target creature gets +2/+0 first strike and trample until end of turn. And that's a lot of goodness.
Then there's...
That's like a powerful tactical weapon. You know what I mean? Like your ability to just drop the Royal Scions and then punch through a lot more damage than somebody was expecting.
Yeah,
I think that's a great option.
That's like traditionally like a white 3 casting cost planeswalker, right? Something like that is a white 3 casting cost. But let me get to the -8. The -8, and again, this starts essentially at 6, right? Because it's 5 loyalty in the bottom right corner, and whatever you're doing initially is a +1. -8, draw 4 cards. When you do, the Royal Scions deals damage to any target equal to the number of cards in your hand. That's pretty good, right? Like that's at least deal 4, like draw 4, deal 4.
Hopefully.
Does
Narset just stop this?
Yes. Yes, it does. It's just nothing, right? You can't draw 4 cards. You will deal damage equal to the number of cards in your hand, though. You can't draw the cards.
Wait, are you sure? It says draw 4 cards when you do.
Oh.
So I don't even know, man.
That's good. I don't know. I think this card is like, I think it's like it's a specialist. Like, you know how some of the other 3 casting cost planeswalker standard, your Narset, your Teferis are just like broad base annihilators of opponents. Then you got your Ashiok only come in sometimes. I feel like the Royal Scions is more in, like, I don't think you want to play. I think it's very good in some of the cases that Narset is very good, and it's very bad in the cases where Narset is still pretty.
I think it's a lot worse than Dack Faded. That's my hot take.
Talk to me about Dack Faded. That guy's never been legal in a format that I've played. So
yeah, Dack Faded was clearly just made for Vintage and is in Legacy, but it's busted in Vintage and it's pretty good in Legacy. I don't know, man. It's just draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards. But yeah, this one, it's kind of interesting. It's not like Sarkhan 3 actually did all that much. The one thing this thing has going for it, though, is, man, that's a lot of Planeswalker loyalty with an ultimate that's no joke. So I think you got to be in for the +2/+0 first strike and trample part of this card to have it be appealing. You know what I mean? I think the rest of the stuff can come together, but I think your deck has to also actually value the first strike trample and +2/+0. So we'll have to see what kind of stuff they make, you know, because a double strike creature, now we're starting to do something different, you know?
What if you're a proliferate guy? Like, what if you've got just the ability to ramp that 5 to 8 very rapid?
I don't think this is the card to proliferate.
No?
No, because you're not getting as much leverage out of each point of loyalty. The fact that the Royal Scions goes up to 6 immediately, and you only have to get to 8, but you're like proliferating once doesn't get you there. So like, I don't know.
So this card does have some oddities to it, right? So it's not up to 1 target creature gets +2/+0 and gains first strike and trample. It is target creature gets +2.
Yeah, that's okay because you have draw a card then discard a card, so it's not like you're stuck.
But what if so again, what if you have Narset in play against you?
Yeah, Narset's better against this card.
Like, no, is it draw? Do you just discard a card? You don't draw a card? So like, I feel like you might get stuck sometimes.
Yeah, you will, but who cares? That's true whenever you have a Narset versus a card draw card.
All right. Yeah, I just think it's a little limiting. I think that if that just had up to 1 target creature gets +2/+0 instead. I
doubt that will be the difference maker, because it's not like this ultimate's all that good anyway when there's a Narset down.
Oh, you're right. It's kind of garbage there.
But there's other stuff in this set that's kind of drawing a lot of attention, namely these adventures, which the way the adventure cards work, they got this silly frame of sorts where it's like a card, but then the left half of the bottom, like the left half of the text box, has this extra text box with a cost, and it's a sorcery adventure or an instant adventure. And it lets you pay. Basically, there's split card, flashback cards of sorts, right? You can either just play it as the creature straight up, like Animating Fairy is 2 and a blue for a 2/2 flyer. So you can just play it as a 2/2 flyer for 2 and a blue if you wanted. Or you can adventure it, and if you do the adventure, you pay the adventure cost, which in this case happens to be also 2 and a blue for a sorcery adventure. Target non-creature artifact you control becomes a 0/0 artifact creature. Put 4+1/+1 counters on it. And not all the adventures, in fact, a lot of the adventures are not the same cost as the creature. So that's not like that's the thing. But these aren't just split cards. After you play that sorcery, part of the resolution of it is that you exile the adventure card, and then you can play it as the creature later anyway. So here you could pay 3 mana as a sorcery to transform. Like you can target non-creature artifacts such as food, becomes a 0/0 artifact creature with 4+1/+1 counters on it. So in this case, you just have a 4/4 creature that could attack immediately if you already had the food in play. And then the Animating Fairy is exiled, and then you can play it from exile for 2 and a blue to get a 2/2 flyer.
Yeah, I think one of the best cards that has been spoiled so far is actually
Which one?
Lovestruck Beast. So,
yeah,
Lovestruck Beast is 2 and a green for a 5/5 creature. It's a Beast Noble, and it has a little bit of a drawback. It says it says Lovestruck Beast can't attack unless you control a 1/1. So if you don't have a 1/1 creature you can't attack, you can still block, right? So it's not like a Mog restriction, right? So it has an adventure, which is Heart's Desire. For the low cost of a single green mana, for G, you have the sorcery adventure Heart's Desire, create a 1/1 white human creature token. So for G, you make Bell. For 2 and a G, you make the Beast. And it's like 6 power over 2 bodies on 1 piece of cardboard. And the thing is, the Lovestruck Beast, I think it's already like a negator, right? Like 5/5 for 3. That's pretty strong. It has a little bit of a drawback, but it isn't only in love with Bell, right? Like you can make the Heart's Desire for G, but any 1/1 work, right? Like if you just cast this on the second turn with a Llanowar Elf, you have a 1/1, right? It's powerful. Or if you've got like March of the Multitudes, powerful.
You do got to be careful. Part of the drawback is the fact that you can't just play this with some sort of a global buff that's +1/+1 in your team, or else you'd only be able to attack if you actually had something that was a base 0/0. So you can Lovestruck Beast can work well with +1/+1 counters though, because you can drop counters on things, and even if you have to buff everything, you can then play a 1/1 out of your hand somehow. But I think this card's a masterpiece design, and it seems quite strong. I think the fact that you can just pay 1 mana for a 1/1 and then you draw a card. Remember, compare this to Thraben Inspector, right? You don't even have to pay the 2 mana to draw the card. You just draw the card immediately. Now your 1 mana play is a 1/1 instead of a 1/2, which is meaningful, but it's way more meaningful to save paying 2 mana. And then the Lovestruck Beast as a card, the Lovestruck Beast as a card is like fine.
Well, yeah, 3 mana 5/5 is way better than, quote, an average card, right?
Well, and even if you were to factor in the drawback and everything, it's like, dude, compared to Thraben Inspector, you're saving 2 mana from having to draw the card that way. Like, this card is, like, I mean, I don't know. I think as long as you got some 1/1s, this card seems excellent.
Yeah, absolutely think this is one of the best cards in the set, though.
It's interesting, the dynamic, though. There's going to be some interesting little sub-battles. Like, for instance, you can just play Lovestruck Beast against a blue mage that you suspect having a negate, And if you get greedy and try to just play Heart's Desire, they could negate it, and then you get nothing.
Yeah, it goes to the graveyard.
Right, so there's a lot of play there with little interactions like that, you know?
Ah.
And then the amount that Lovestruck Beast gives you 2 bodies, I think is actually really important. It's not like the token decks we've been seeing over the last year and a half have been like rife with 1-drops. It's really nice to have access to one, you know?
Yeah.
Plus, if you end up playing some sort of a proliferate strategy, it is a human token, so you do get an extra token that way. I like this one a lot better than the other adventure card they showed in green that makes tokens, Flaxen Intruder. This is the one that's green for 1/2. When Flaxen Intruder deals combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice it. When you do, destroy target artifact or enchantment. And then, so she goes into the 3 bears house. And in this case, the 3 bears are represented by Welcome Home, 5 green, create 3 2/2 green bear creature tokens.
Yeah, that's a big ask to, you invest to get them both, you got to invest 7 first, and then later you have the joyful privilege of casting a 1/2 for G.
Yeah, but I think it's much more about the fact that if you're into Flaxen Intruder, it's got to be because you value it as a 1-drop. It is a human, and you might value this. You might consider this ability to be disruptive enough. I just think it's a little too conditional, and I also just don't think you're going to get very much mileage out of a 7 call. Spending 7 mana to make 3 tokens and then draw a 1 mana 1/2.
Yeah, I don't think that this card is never going to have utility, but I think it would be odd, right? I can imagine some sort of Ranger of Eos situation where you're using your ability to find a 1 casting cost card gets you your disenchant. Like, that's okay, I can kind of buy that. But like, it's still odd.
The biggest thing I think here is just as a draft card, it kind of has kicker, But I don't know. This one's kind of medium.
How about the Beanstalk Giant? Right, so this is another one of these.
Dude, this card has Flores written all over it.
I like it. So the Beanstalk Giant's spell version, its adventure is Fertile Footsteps. For 2 and a G, you can search your library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield. So just onto the battlefield, not even tapped. Then shuffle your library, and then its not alternate mode is 6 and a G, so 7 total. And it makes a giant. Beanstalk Giant's power and toughness are each equal to the number of lands you control. So this is implying a 7/7 or bigger for 7.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, man. I guess it's okay. You'd have to be playing some kind of ramp deck that just wants extra material.
Yeah,
it could be fun.
I think you need to be willing to invest 3 mana for your ramp card, right? So some people are willing to do that. Other people are less willing to do that. If you're willing to do that, then you're like, all right, it's fine. I got a ramp out of this. Later on, I'm going to get a 7.
And in particular, if you compare it with some sort of like with Shock or something, so that you're actually only spending 2, because you do get the rebate, right? Like it gives you the land untapped.
Oh yeah. So if you get like an island and you can immediately opt, or you get like a mountain immediately shock. I guess. It's still clearly much worse than, right? But
much worse.
It's less worse in the case that you have 1-drops, or you get a G and you just cast your Flaxen Intruder right then.
So I think this card's okay. It's nothing to write home about. It's much more. I think this card could be really good in the event that that there's some powerful ramp incentive that just needs, like, what's the best 3-cost card on curve? Like the best 3-cost ramp spell, and then the fact that it just gives you a threat later. The threat's a real threat. It's going to die a lot, and it's going to be like awkward a lot. But
yeah, but it's also always on the bonus. That's the thing, right? Like the Beanstalk Giant himself never really costs you a card. So that's what I like about it. Like it's not good. It's it's just, it's very value added.
Yeah, it's fine. If you just want some value, it's a modest amount of value.
Is a 7 typically outside the range of what you want to cast for a card?
Well, no, I mean, if the 7 is like Karn, Karn 7, I think for 7 mana, you normally need to have it be really strong. The card that comes to mind, I mean, this is like, I wouldn't want to play Beanstalk Giant for 4.
But Beanstalk Giant for 4 is way worse than Beanstalk Giant for 7. That's the thing. It's a weird card in that. Like a 4-mana Beanstalk Giant is like a 3/3 or 4/4. Right? A 7-mana Beanstalk Giant is a 7/7.
That is one of the tricks those wily designers have up their sleeve.
It's weird, right? Like it's not a good
sort of.
card.
It's not that weird. But all right. It's just that it scales. I just mean that if this card costs 4, you wouldn't really play with it. And it being a cantrip, you wouldn't really play with it as a 7-mana cantrip. So, like, I think you got to really be in for 3 mana, go get, it's clearly worth more than nothing to have the option. But, like, I don't think it's worth that much.
I hear
it's
you.
It's not even worth a mana.
Okay.
And that's the difference between this and Rampant Growth, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, we bend over backwards to play bad versions of
but it could be okay because if that one land untapped is useful, then you've actually only spent the same as Rampant Growth, albeit a turn later. There's another green adventure card, Rose Thorn Acolyte, and I like the spread of ones they showed because I think they're really showing off some of the space that adventure has because these cards play so differently from each other. Rose Thorn Acolyte's 2 and a green for a 2/3 elf druid that taps for a mana of any color. So already, it's not that far off. It's a little bit better than some options we've seen in the past, but I don't think it's quite good enough. But it has the seasonal ritual adventure, green sorcery, add 1 mana of any color. So you get to wash a mana earlier in the first 2 turns of the game. You get kind of a cheaper Manamorphose.
A Manamorphose that doesn't draw a card.
Well, it does draw a card.
It draws
it's just the card it draws. Right, the card it draws is a Rose Thorn Acolyte.
I hope I don't eat my words on this, but I don't think this card is great at all.
Yeah, I don't think it's great either, but I think it's a curiosity. I think the fact that you can do this for just 1 mana, that's at least interesting. And like this could be a part of some weird elf combo deck if they made the right synergies. Overall, though, it's probably not that strong. But it's kind of interesting to think about, Like whenever there's a Manamorphose, you gotta like at least note it, right? Like that's something for nothing is like a pretty good price, even if it's a very, 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 very small amount of something.
I mean, if you venture over into red has Embereth Shieldbreaker, which is an adventure guy, and that card has its adventure is Battle Display. R sorcery, destroy target artifact, and then its regular body is 1 and an R for a human knight, just a 2/1, like nothing special. No,
but good types.
Yeah, but I think this card is pretty good because R for a destroy target artifact I could be into, and I'm
close.
I'm getting it. Like I played Manic Vandal, right? In Constructed, I was happy to play Manic Vandal. This card is a little more flexible than Manic Vandal. At the same time, you don't get Manic Vandal's potential synergies with stuff like, for example, when I played Manic Vandal, I once put a Splinter Twin on it, and it was awesome. Like, it doesn't really work that way. But I think that, like, just having the 1-drop capability to destroy the artifact, and then the automatic ability to follow up with a human knight is, like, I think there's something there. I think this card is probably going to see play as a result.
Oh, yeah, I think so, too. I think it's going to be all about whether you want to destroy artifacts. As long as there's artifacts worth destroying, this is a pretty good way to do it. It's not, like, it's not revolutionizing things, but it's pretty interesting.
No,
there's another...
It's a cute little card,
Definitely. I think it's solid. Like the fact that Ignite Chewer sees so much play, and obviously Ignite Chewer can be played even when Sorceries and Instants cannot. But I think the Ignite Chewer provides a pretty good template, because for a lot of the time that you would play Ignite Chewer, there's going to be spots where this is just a better card for you.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, this is going to pay you back a little bit better.
It's not a adventure card, but there is another Human Knight, Embereth Paladin, that kind of reveals a little bit of why that Rosethorn Acolyte might have some meaning in this draft format. The fact that Adamant is this new ability. If at least 3 red mana was spent to cast the spell, Embereth Paladin enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter. So the ability to wash one of your green mana into a red mana could actually be useful for getting you an extra +1/+1 counter when you're playing the Embereth Paladin.
So this guy is 3 in a red for a 4/1 haste. So it could be like red and 3 colorless, or red and like green, blue, white, or red and green, 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 whatever it is. And he's a 4/1 haste. But if you can get him for red, 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 and then anything else, then he's a 5/2 haste, which isn't the most exciting template for a card. But I actually think that it might see play in Construct.
I think so too, because of its good types. I think that the amount of night stuff.
Yeah.
But there's also just 5 is the right amount, right?
Yeah, I think it's exactly the right amount to come in and crush certain Planeswalkers. Like haste, like people were playing Charging Monstrosaur in the last standard cycle. Charging Monstrosaur is like not a terrible card, but it's just like kind of it's horrible when you compare it to like a Reality Smasher, right? But it is bigger for a similar casting cost than like the average hasted dragon that was available in standard. Like there are a variety of like 4/4 flying haste you could play, but instead they're playing 5/5 not flying ground guy. And that extra point of power is the only reason you would choose to play Charging Monstrosaur over, some kind of dragon. And I think like Embereth Paladin gives you a lot of what people were looking for in Charging Monstrosaur for a full mana less. That's very exciting.
Definitely. And when it's paired with Slaying Fire, you have all the more reason to be playing such a red heavy deck. Oh. Slaying Fire is that 2 in a red instant. That's a big deal. 2 in a red instant, deal 3 damage to any target, and if at least 3 red mana, so if you spend RRR, it deals 4 instead.
Yeah, so this is like a kind of somewhere between a Flame Javelin and a Char without a drawback, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like a Flame Javelin, but in the event that you just have too many colorless lands, you still get to deal 3. You don't have to make the Flame Javelin cost 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever.
Yeah. I think that this card, maybe there's like a red Adamant deck that really just plays Embereth Paladin. I'm thinking back to the Michael Jacob days, when Flame Javelin was paired with Demigod of Revenge. You remember that deck? Like,
yeah.
There were just like semi rules. Like you can't, if you drew any two, like if you like a redundant copy of like Demigod of Revenge, Flame Javelin, or Lightning, you almost always won the game. Like you just if you drew like 2 copies of the same card. And like I think Embereth Paladin obviously is not the same card as Demigod of Revenge, but 5 power haste paired with 4 damage instant for 3 mana, and that's the guts of a very different red deck than we've seen, but it might be a red deck I'm into.
The only reason I mentioned the Knight stuff, the amount of Knights synergies, I mean, I guess that's a different way. I think the red deck you're describing does sound very promising. But as far as the Knight stuff, the hurdle it's going to have to overcome is the fact that stuff like History of Benalia is rotating out.
I mean, there just has to be a new story for the Knights. Like,
sure.
I mean, this set's got a lot of promising Knights. Like Black has a lot of Knights that you might be willing to talk about. Right? Like, what about like Foulmire? Foulmire Knight is an adventuring knight. He's a 1 casting cost, 1/1 death touch, zombie knight for B. right? And that's not the most exciting card in the world.
Nope.
But like, people have certainly, at one time or another, been in the market for a 1/1 Death Touch. There are some decks that have a lot of problems with the 1/1 Death Touch, and that's the back end, right? You have the front end, which is Profane Insight, 2 and a B, instant adventure. You draw a card and then lose 1 life. Right, so you got like
Great.
a horrible rate mini Necropotence that follows up with 1/1 Death Touch. But hey, it's a nice.
Maybe, man. I don't know. I think you'd have to want the types on this one pretty badly. I just don't think 3 mana, draw a card, and lose a life is that good of a cantrip thing.
Oh, I think it's kind of horrible. I think if you want to play this card, it's got to be.
Yeah, the Zombie Knight Death Touch. The black card I'm all about. Rankle, Master of Pranks.
Wow.
Dude. 2 black, 3/3 Fairy Rogue. This legend is a 3/3 flying haste. And when Rankle Master Pranks deals combat damage to a player, choose any number of the following 3 modes. So you can do 1, 0, 1, 2, or 3 of these modes. Each player discards a card like Liliana. Each player loses a life and draws a card. Oh, interesting. And then each player sacrifices a creature. So like straight up, you've got that Liliana action where you could be attritioning resources, which is particularly nice if you have cards that can play from the graveyard or cards that aren't good in the specific matchup. But each player loses a life and draws a card means you can put extra pressure on people. You can dig to answers. You can also put yourself in a spot where, like if you have no cards in your hand, you could do both of those modes, and the discard would happen first, so you would not have to discard anything because you just don't have anything in your hand. And then your opponent would
have to discard.
Right, and then each player loses a life and draws a card, so you're kind of getting the better of it. And then finally, that each player sacrifices a creature, which is fantastic. If you just have stuff that's like, random 0/1s or 1/1s or whatever laying around, or if you're just playing some kind of like crazy Judith deck, where I think this card is going to shine.
Yeah, this card is, first of all, the fact that it's a 3/3 haste, flying haste, right? Like, you can come out and surprise your opponent when their mana is tapped. You're high likelihood of hitting because of the combination of flying and haste, and then edicting them. Like, if you've got like a garbagey token and they've got like some sweet creature that's on the, I mean, that's no prank you want to be on the wrong end. Rankle did not play nicely.
Dude, this card combo with Spellstutter Sprite.
Oh, it's a fairy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you got them with like a counter spell, and then you got them again.
Well, you also get to sack the Spellstutter Sprite to Rankle.
Yeah. I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
You just get him again. Like, and presumably the Spellstutter Sprite is way worse than whatever they got eaten by Rankle.
Right. And it is an edict effect. So if your opponent has like if your opponent was so foolish as to attack with their Shimmer Dragon.
Yeah. Got him.
So this card just seems excellent to me. It's obviously, I mean, at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot of spots where you could get the worst of it, right? Like when a deal 3 can kill a 4-drop. But the fact that it has haste, and if it connects even once, you've got so many good options. And I can't stress enough how much the volatility on this card benefits the person with Rankle. Even though the effect seems symmetrical, the fact that you get to pick which things are an effect or not is so powerful for letting you capitalize on specific situations.
Oh yeah, and this card is like a Swiss Army knife. You can use it to lock the opponent out, like Liliana in the hand. I mean, it's also like, 2 of the abilities are very Liliana, right? The sacrifice creature. What do you think about that ability to lose 1 life and draw a card? One of the things that I think is very subtle about this is it makes Rankle into kind of like a 4-power creature. So they're drawing a card, yes, but like maybe getting them for that extra point of damage is what you care.
Good question.
In a black,
it's worth it. Oh, go ahead.
In a black-red deck, you might want to draw that extra card yourself because it might end up being a burn spell, and that's good for you. And the 1 point of life that you're both losing is also good.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's more of that increasing the volatility in certain situations. Like, uh, what do you think of Rankle's weakness to Planeswalkers? Right, like Rankle doesn't hit Planeswalkers very hard, and if you ever hit the Planeswalker, you don't get to choose any of these options.
I think that if you're willfully attacking Rankle with a Planeswalker, you're probably
well, yeah, for sure. But like compared to a lot of 4-drops, Rankle's not going to be as good. I mean, I guess Haste is a nice option.
Haste is a big game here. I think maybe. Like if you're doing that, it's not because you wanted to; it's because you had to, and you're probably happy to have a Haste guy that can
come. What do you think of Rankle versus Taste of Death? Taste of Death. Now that's the way to beat a Shimmer Dragon. This is the 4/black sorcery. Each player sacrifices 3 creatures. You create 3 food tokens.
So this card is extremely flavorful, and I guess that would be pretty in theme for a card that makes 3 food tokens, right? So it's so this card is very bad if you have 1, 2, or 3 creatures, and they have fewer than 3 creatures. And it's potentially dicey if they have more than 3 creatures and you have one in particular you care about. And I'm just wondering when I would really want Taste of Death versus some other sweep option.
Well, isn't this like if you're playing some kind of a blue-black control deck, right? Like, let's say that they want to play around Liliana, right? Like Liliana 6 the fact that she kills 2 creatures makes it so that they want to have 3. But if you Taste of Death and kill 3 creatures, you've devastated them. But even if you only kill 2, you're still doing pretty good. You're not only you're getting a 2-for-1 that's affecting the board and killing stuff, whether it's a Carnage Tyrant type of, and I know that guy's rotating, but like difficult to deal with threats. But the fact that you have an implied 9 life available to you later.
Yeah, the thing I'm kind of wondering about with Taste of Death is, unless there's something I don't know about yet, right? Like something that you want to have a lot of permanence in play, or in fact maybe a lot of food in play. It's like other options are still available right now. Like we've got Kaya's Wrath. Obviously if you're
not if you're playing blue-black.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I mean, even you're describing Liliana, like 1 point removal into Liliana at 6, I find to be way more attractive. I think this card is. I think it's playable. I don't know where I would want to play it. Okay. I mean, I do kind of like the idea of making 3 food. That seems
then you can make your Shimmer Dragon so much more reliable.
Yeah, I'm setting her up. All right.
Yeah, set him up, knock him down. Dude, there is a different black card that I think is just like an automatic hit in powered formats, and it'll be good in standard too in some spots, but Witch's Cottage. It's a land swamp, tap for a black. It enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 3 or more other swamps, which don't need to be basic. So it works even with like Overgrown Tomb or whatever.
Yeah, so fetchland formats where you have a variety of high utility swamp and the ability to get Witch's Cottage.
Right. The fact that you can turn your fetch lands into Witch's Cottage because it has this other ability, which is when Witch's Cottage enters the battlefield untapped, you may put target creature card from your graveyard on top of your library. So the fact that you can make a fetch land into a worldly tutor of sorts, like a raised dead effect, where you can ensure that you're going to have a solid threat next turn, it's a lot of value for a land that is I think it's going to show up as a one-of in a variety of black, green, or Jund or Abzan decks. You just got to be careful because obviously it would come into play tapped the first 3 turns of the game. But I think it's a solid option. Like whenever you can turn your fetch lands into such a higher impact card, it's worth taking note of. There's going to be some spots for this.
Do you think it's going to be like Boros Reckoner was, where it makes somebody like very mindful about what specific lands they're choosing? Like, if let's say you're playing an Abzan deck, do you want to have build your entire mana base around swamp variants instead of playing like forest variants?
Yeah, I think Witch's Cottage is definitely the type of card that's going to make you really value stuff like Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth.
Ooh.
Or just playing a real heavy black base.
Yeah, I see it. I think the fact that it's actually a swamp itself is pretty.
Definitely. Dude, Wishing Well, blue artifact when it enters the battlefield, scry 2, and you can pay 3 and a blue and sack it to draw 2 cards.
I love it.
Doesn't this card remind you of Hieroglyphic Illumination?
It's like kind of better, right? So Hieroglyphic Illumination.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, you paid the one. Usually, you paid the one early because you needed to fix your mana, right? You do that here, and you still get to fix your mana. And in fact, if all you're trying to do is fix your mana, you dig better, right? Hieroglyphic Illumination was only one card that you're drawing. This you're scrying too. You can get rid of both of them.
Yeah, for extra mana,
right? But then you still get the backside option of drawing your extra cards, which you couldn't with Hieroglyphic.
Yeah, I think this card looks good. The fact that it is smooths your draw early, lets you draw cards later, and gives you artifact synergies. And it's not just Shimmer Dragon, whatever other artifact synergies they make. It's not trivial, though. The fact that it costs 4, it's more telegraphed, right? Like Hieroglyphic Illumination, there's the threat when they have 4 of doing it. But Witching Well, they already have the Witching Well on the table. I think the card looks good, though. I think it's going to depend on what else you're going to want to be doing on that 4th turn.
Like, I can imagine even playing this in, like, a blue-green flash deck, right? Like, you're not doing that much on turn 1. And then it's just another card that lets you, forces them to play into your...
Yeah, I think it's going to show up a bunch of different places. I think people are going to slightly overplay it because the opportunity cost of mana is a real thing. But I think if you're specifically in the market for some draw smoothing early and some extra material late, Witching Well might be what you're looking for.
One drawback to it is, if you compare it to like a classic Inspiration or I guess Hieroglyphic Illumination, Glimmer, whatever, it's just way worse at drawing, right? Like,
it is.
Like if that's all you wanted, it's way worse, massively drawing. It's costed at Tidings, and the speed of a Tidings. That's how bad it is.
Sort of. It's not really the speed of a Tidings, though.
I mean, the front side is the speed of
the front side is. But also, once you've invested that 1 mana, it's kind of a glimmer of genius.
Yeah, I mean, if the 1 mana is free, i.e. you played it on the first turn or sometime when you have like a massive amount of mana, then the card is like, excitingly positioned. But
I mean, it's also way better to scry 2 on the first turn than it is on turn 4, right? Like by the time you cast your Glimmer of Genius, it's kind of nice to have already gotten the scry 2 3 turns earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I think like Witching Well is at its best when you would have otherwise not spent the mana. That's the...
Well, of course, definitely.
Maybe that's tautological for Magic cards.
Well, awesome. Dude, it seems like there's just so much in this set, and we're only scratching the surface here.
What's your fave so far?
So from a power level standpoint, probably Garruk, but from a I just wanna do it. I mean, so the bad part of me, it wants it to be Witching Well, but nowadays I think it's Rankle Master of Pranks or the. I mean, Lovestruck Beast is pretty up there, but it might still. I don't know. I guess Rankle Master of Pranks or Witching Well. But I mean, I'm going to jam this Garruk so much. Garruk's probably going to be the card of these I play the most.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to want to own 4 copies of that card. I think Lovestruck Beast is this... I'm not sure. It might be the strongest card they've shown so far, but it or Garruk, I think, are the strongest cards. I'm definitely very excited to play Garruk. I'm not that excited to play Lovestruck Beast. I just think it's good.
Yeah. Me too. Awesome, dude. See you next week with a whole bunch more Throne of Eldraine.
Life didn't work so great. Tried to play Dredge, it's a jail or hate. ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis days. Lost a lot of friends, got left behind. Had to find a way not to lose my mind. Trapped in a vault with nothing but time. Parents and my friends were the key to find. Magic gave me purpose and drive. The game, the love, it kept me alive. Visions, a better weather, light inside. To through the mirage, gotta survive.